Reservoir Dogs.
Woo!
Quentin Tarantino's debut feature film. Not initially well received, but it has since become recognized as one of the most seminal independent films ever made. Starring Harvey Keitel, Steve Buscemi, and Tim Roth, Tarantino shot this film in just 35 days with a modest budget of $1.5 million, and yet still revolutionized cinema's approach to dialogue, violence, and narrative. Hello everybody, welcome back to the Mate Night Podcast, where we are ranking every film ever made.
Hi there, Dave.
Today we're diving into this low-budget gem. We'll be debating its rightful score amongst the greats, exploring Tarantino's position between inspiration and plagiarism, and uncovering some of the most intriguing production stories. So strap in, strap on, and let's kick things off with our rating round.
Woo!
Fred, how do we score a film like Reservoir Dogs when we have only 9 minutes to agree? Starting now, go.
Starting now. Reservoir Dogs, a truly great film. Both thoroughly enjoyable and groundbreaking, as you mentioned. Now, at first glance, the plot may seem a touch generic, centering on a diamond heist gone tragically wrong. But Quentin Tarantino infuses it with enough quirks to elevate the story to something memorable. The non-chronological structure, which you alluded to there, beautifully by the way, paired with seminal dialogue and standout performances, particularly, in my opinion, from Steve Buscemi and Michael Madsen, keeps you hooked from start to finish. Another hallmark worth mentioning is the inclusion of harrowing, violent set pieces, something Tarantino would later become famous for. However, it's worth noting that this level of violence won't appeal to everyone. I like it. Yeah. This film's shoestring budget leaves an indelible charm, making the most of every scene. That said, the mise en scène is at times carried by the exceptional writing rather than the visuals. A couple of performances, in my opinion, again, feel a bit jarring. For me, Tim Roth's portrayal, funnily enough, I know most people quite like it, but I just find him a bit Weasley, and I don't think his accent sticks the landing. And of course, Quentin Tarantino himself, who is a bad actor.
The great Tarantino.
Luckily, he's in a bit of a smaller role in this one. Overall, Reservoir Dogs has a veneer of imperfection that, while charming, places it just a smidge below Tarantino's best works. Still, it remains a quality debut and one that has undeniably left its mark on cinema history. I'd give it a score of 8.53.
8.53, okay.
8 is great.
I like it. Okay, right. Well, here's what I'm thinking.
Go on, hit me.
If you're enjoying this video, you should like and subscribe.
Nice.
And if you have anything to input, please let us know in the comments.
Beautiful.
I also think that I can draw a hard line under 8. Yep. The reason being, any film that breaks this much new ground, especially in such a successful way, immediately deserves a higher score. And just to give you an idea of all the different areas, the dialogue was unusual, the level and the presentation of violence, the non-linear narrative, the patient but decisive music selection. This is just Tarantino. He knows what he needs from his music. And the plethora of references to pop culture, which really, this film was the first to really bring all this stuff in together. So some other things that really helped. I don't really like nonlinear narratives, as you know, usually. But this nailed it. And I love this nonlinear narrative because it's clear. It makes it dynamic and interesting. It's very, very exciting. The characters, they feel real to me. And this comes partly from the dialogue, partly from Mr. Pink being there, saying the whole time, we should get out of here.
Yeah.
You need those characters.
Doing it.
Again, dialogue, magnificent. Great quote. I just thought I'd bring one for an example. If you shoot that man, you die next. Repeat. If you shoot that man, you die next.
Nice.
Oh, love that. So, yeah, not below an 8 for me.
Sure.
What's wrong with it? Why not give it a 10? What could we take away from it?
Okay.
I had a very hard time answering this question.
Okay, all right.
Some imperfections, like visually, it wasn't a 10 out of 10. Mr. White doesn't point out a very important and obvious fact. There's a detail in the production where somebody dies even though nobody is aiming anything at them. They decide to keep it in the final thing because he liked it, but it's just a detail I didn't like. Tarantino and Lawrence Tierney's performances were not great. So these guys do knock it down. My gut says something like 8.5 to 8.7, which would put it on our cinephiles around The Silence of the Lambs, Apocalypse Now, and Psycho. But I can't figure out what is wrong with it and why it can't be above a 9. So I was hoping maybe you could help shed some ideas on what's wrong with this film.
Okay, great points. We covered a lot of same ground. An area that you pointed out that I hadn't mentioned, which is a phenomenal boon, feather in its cap, is the sound score, soundtrack quality. And, we want to really be clear how this, the ripple effect of Reservoir Dogs and later Pulp Fiction in terms of the ability for, just shooting the shit dialogue in movies, copycatted across the board for the whole 90s was trying to recreate the magic that he was able to put into his dialogue, his writing. So what marked it down for me? So I did mention a couple of bits. I'm not a big fan of Tim Roth, and he's a really... I'm sorry, I like Tim Roth. I don't like him in this. I think his accent doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And the way he portrays Mr. Orange as a very kind of conniving-y, weaselly, just pain in the arse sort of character. I can't believe she killed me. She killed me. Doesn't do it for me. I think that I was always surprised at his inclusion from the first moment when he's like, "Hey, I want my dollar back," and he's trying a New York accent. You're like, Tim, calm down.
Okay.
Obviously, Tarantino himself. So I mentioned, and you mentioned as well, visually, that's where he really made strides in the following films. He had an absolute shoestring budget, and it does mean that it's basically driven by dialogue. And then the other thing is the generic nature of the plot. So the kind of heist. We'll speak about the
do you reckon?
From my perspective, heist gone wrong, and the way that where it leads to.
Yeah.
I think, considering how innovative he goes on to be later, in a setting which is not just multiple narratives, but multiple different stories within one.
Yeah.
And that really is an elevation.
It's not a Shyamalan idea. It's not where the hell did he come up with this? No. In fact, as you mentioned, we will be going into exactly where he came up with this.
Yeah.
Okay, we are running out of time. We've only got a minute left. You said 8.57.
We're 8.53, but 8.53 well here because we're right on the money. What did you say? 8.5 to 8.7.
I said 8.5 to 8.7. It would put it with Silence of the Lambs, Apocalypse Now, and Psycho, and I feel quite comfortable with that. Mm-hmm. I'm still not convinced by... I don't know the accents thing myself personally. I don't hear it as clearly as you do. So obviously it seems like that's quite an important thing. If you took that away, what would the score be? How much of an impact has that had on your final score?
Well, what have I looked at? My personal enjoyment of this film marks it down a tiny bit.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So that's one element.
Just not yeah. Okay.
It kind of not that it drags a bit, but I think that my enjoyment has been taken down a notch by the fact that it's been so overplayed that style, unfortunately, because he broke such new ground. But I tried to take that into account. Performances, I didn't think that good. The characters, yes, some of them are excellent, but some are just completely not fleshed out. Mm-hmm. Dialogue's obviously great, and then visually, it does work and it has a charm, but also it feels like really low budget to the point of you are 100% being carried by. Oh, that's me.
Okay, so
100%
I think
being carried by the dialogue.
I think I'm going to campaign for 8.60.
8.6.
The May Night has rated, and you have heard the exact reasons why, perfectly articulated, as always, that Reservoir Dog deserves an 8.6 out of 10 overall in the scoring, which would put it neatly between The Silence of the Lambs and Apocalypse Now, would make it the 7th greatest film of all time.
Until further notice.
Thanks so much for listening, everyone. See you on the next one.
Cheers. One thing I do want to ask you, because I didn't have time during that, it was in your opening script. It's specific. This is going to be a question about the film, so we may want to record it. What did you mean when you say it wasn't that well received when it came out?
So the ultra violence, they had no money left for marketing, and the ultra violence it broadly critically got really bad reviews.
Right.
And then it came out in the UK and did really, really well. And then back in America following that, then started to do better. Right. But actually on release, it didn't do very well.
Right. Okay. Got it. But only within like the first year, right? Because then it went to Cannes.
Yeah. So obviously it's done amazingly. I mean, it's one of the. But when it was very first came out, it was so. Especially the violence seems to be, because I've read a lot of these old reviews because people do quote them. A lot of the old reviews say, like, it's mindless violence and this violence is awful and this, that, and the other. And I think that it was so new to the scene that people weren't kind of okay with it for a bit.
It's interesting. I recommend. We've watched a bit of it before, but that video by something Sino. Let me just find him for us. But he basically goes through, the whole history of Tarantino. That video on YouTube.
Okay.
And we've watched a bit of it before, and it's really, really bloody cool. Colo Kino.
Oh, mate. I've been studying his thumbnails.
Amazing video. He has like a 4-part series or something on the history of Tarantino. And he went into the detail about how, like, it did badly, but it was only released in like 10 theatres in the UK. It made $100,000. It's like, wow, fair enough.
Yeah, that's it. So it wasn't like it was a bit badly received as well, specifically by critics, but also it wasn't that everyone thought it was a bad film. It's just like not that many people really knew about it, and then I guess a little bit of, and I found this with Reservoir Dogs is if it's a world-class film that everybody loves, then I guess you immediately just say like, yeah, it's great, because you just you must just do that by default a little bit, and then these critics and these people were seeing this film that like nobody's fucking watching, nobody's heard of, and it's just like this bizarre violence where a man cuts off a man's ear. Yeah. And they're like, what's this shit indie film that's doing? Do you know what I mean? I think like it didn't have that prestige around the name that meant that the critics really understood it, I guess, but fuck knows, mate.
Oh, cool. All right, which one are we doing next?
Well, that concludes the Mate Night ranking. Let us know in the comments below this podcast, because you can, whether you'd agree or not with our score. It's time to move on to some deeper stuff. All right, you ready?
All right, yeah. Let's go into something a bit more serious, all right?
Okay. Fred.
Fred! Yes.
Okay, Fred, given the title of this video, I take it you're about to tell me that Tarantino is a bit naughty with plagiarism.
What makes you say that, Jambo?
The title of the video.
The title of the video. So, plagiarism. Ooh, plagiarism. What a big word that we all learnt when we got to college and university. So, plagiarism. Tarantino has been accused of being a little naughty in this regard. And it came off the back of the film that we're reviewing this week, Reservoir Dogs. And it started to drum up a bit of accusatory critiques following his release of this film, and particularly as it pertains to the 1987 Hong Kong film by Ringo Lam, City on Fire. What I'm going to do for you, ladies and gentlemen, today is go through the similarities between these two. We'll discuss whether this is a case of plagiarism, whether it's a case of something else, something worse, something better. And then we want to have a bit more of a discussion around the role of stealing in art with the case study of Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah. Why we think it's okay that... Because a lot of people are aware of how bad it can get sometimes.
To be honest, we'll give this example, right? And it's not just that he maybe does it. It's that he completely gets away with it. No one seems to really care. Occasionally mentioned, but... And we want to understand why that is. Are you happy with that then?
I am excited to give my humble opinion on it.
Nice.
Can't wait.
All right. Brilliant. So
can you hurry up so I can give my humble opinion, please?
Take our time. City on Fire. So I'm going to provide a breakdown now of the film's climax. So it's about 20 minutes, which also will be a bit of an argument as to whether it's plagiarism or not.
Spoilers ahead for Reservoir Dogs, presumably.
Yes, by osmosis. Yes, you will be able to understand the whole plot of Reservoir Dogs from this. So, City on Fire follows, in the final 20 minutes, a gang of robbers with code names who fail a jewelry heist. Names being Brother Joe, Brother Chew, Brother Fu, and Brother Nam. The job is ruined after one of the robbers goes crazy and starts shooting civilians. Starting to sound familiar, Jambo?
It certainly bloody well is.
Police were waiting at the incident of the job because Brother Chew is undercover. During the escape, Brother Fu works to escape with Brother Chew. Fu, at one point, unloads 2 guns through the windshield of a cop car.
Harvey Keitel.
Harvey Keitel.
Yep.
Yes, baby. Maybe actually if you
give
the references.
Harvey Keitel hides behind a wire fence when he sees some cop car come in and then leans around the corner and murders 2 people.
During
Police
this
officers.
escapade, Brother Chew kills an innocent and also gets shot in the stomach.
Brother Chew, who is the undercover cop.
Brother Chew, who is
And the
Mr. Orange.
undercover cop, Mr. Orange, Tim, what's his name?
Roth.
Tim Roth also shoots what, if you didn't know, was his accent teacher, his accent coach, the woman who played.
Deserved to shoot her. She's a shy job. His accent's wank. Right, okay, so Brother Chew kills an innocent. Also, it's not wank, it's just a bit annoying. Also gets shot in the stomach. Then, what next? They rendezvous at a meeting point in an abandoned warehouse where they are met by the big boss of the operation. The boss lays the blame at Chew's feet, saying he is a cop. Fu points his gun at the boss, and there is a Mexican standoff with people. I was looking at the thing. I haven't watched this, but I was looking at the Mexican standoff, and there's a few of them there, and they're all pointing.
They're stood in different positions, but the structure of who is pointing a gun at who is identical.
Yes, literally.
The boss points
Very
at the
much
suspect.
Yeah.
The Mr. White in Reservoir Dog points the gun at the boss.
Yeah.
And then the boss's son points the gun at Mr. White. And the exact same structure. Literally the exact same structure.
So if you couldn't see the similarities between that description and Reservoir Dogs, maybe you're deaf? Because it's the same film.
Okay.
But what I wanted to ask you, Jambo, is this plagiarism?
Okay, very quick question.
Go on.
Before we ask, is this plagiarism? What do you think? Let us know in the comments below. Right. Is it plagiarism?
Yeah, go on.
Okay, here's my thinking. I don't know exactly what the definition of plagiarism is, but I want to just start this conversation off by saying that I think it's totally fucking fine.
Yeah.
I have no issue with it because it's
Why is that?
so completely repackaged.
Yeah.
It's to a different market, right? Because even he's come out and said, I want to make a Western version of this film. And I've always felt like, specifically in art, I mean, all of art, as we know, is kind of inspiration based. And, you know, the phrase steal like an artist. We all steal from art. And I think that part of the thing that makes it okay in Tarantino's case is that he is so sincerely passionate about the thing that he is doing that it feels okay to me. It's not like, I tried to come up with an alternative example. It's not like somebody who doesn't watch films and doesn't make films just watches a single Tarantino and goes, I'm just going to try and make that film again. He's watched millions and millions of films. He outwardly says, I love this film to bits and I want to make a Western version of it. Fine, I don't care.
Yeah, I completely get where you're coming from. Also worth noting, it's not like he has shot for shot gone through. He's basically lifted a story and then he's provided so much extra sauce to this that you got to say, I mean, it is considered a groundbreaking piece of art. Reservoir Dogs changed the 90s.
Yes.
Changed a lot. Reservoir Dogs is responsible for many people who would be listening to this to be into film.
Yes. And more to the point, where would dialogue be in films right now if Tarantino hadn't come on the scene? And he didn't plagiarize that.
No.
He took a couple of pivotal points from the structure of that story, but dialogue being one of the things, he didn't lift that. That's his, and that's part of what makes it so special is the dialogue.
And an interesting point that I saw, which I hadn't thought about, so recontextualization. Okay. Basically, his remixing of a piece
like a song
of
cover.
art. Yeah, and how prevalent that is compared to 50, 100 years ago. Mm-hmm. Now a lot of art, whether it's in music, whether it's in film, which is Reboot City and has been for quite a while,
True,
is basically recycling ideas and trying to find a way of doing them justice. And to be honest, the difference between laziness, let's say plagiarism, but maybe more laziness, and great art is how additive it is.
Yes.
And you've got to say in this case, I mean, he took, for instance, he said that this sequence that I've just described takes place on the final 20 minutes of the film. Mm-hmm. And Yam, who has commented on this, has said, Ringo Lam, who commented on this, has said that he managed to make a full film out of my final 20 minutes. Like, we can't consider this
100%
the same.
Yeah.
He has really beefed up and enhanced, added his own flavour to it, let alone the dialogue addition. Let's say that was the only thing Tarantino did, was make good dialogue, yes. Let alone that groundbreaking approach to dialogue. So in this case, I wouldn't say it's plagiarism. And I guess the greater question is the way art is produced in that way moral? Is that right? Should it be done in that way?
Yeah, I think basically there are a couple of caveats that I think are worth doing. So, for example, be additive. Okay, like you said. One of the ones I was thinking was, and I'm sure he does this, is take from many, many sources. Steal like an artist, but don't steal from one place. I think it's good art to go, I like this guy's soundtrack, but I like this guy's dialogue, and no one's put these guys together very well yet, so that's what I'm going to do. That to me it's not even a question of morally wrong.
It's like a conductor.
That is what art is for me. Is like, and then of course, if you can add on top of that, fine. But you could not make a film without unknowingly be building on stuff that has happened before. I mean, you study any art history, and it is basically just following the pivotal changes that some master of the craft has done, and then basically every single other piece of art following takes from it a bit. It's just the way art works.
Yeah, I've heard arguments before that there are only like 5 core stories.
Yeah, I've heard about this,
And everything else is some sort of manifestation of those, a tragedy, a romance, a comedy.
Yeah.
That sort of, if you take it back to those roots, it's almost like languages.
Yeah.
You see things branching off, and there are like root tongues, aren't there?
I mean, pretty much every single story ever, supposedly, I'm told, can be viewed through the lens of the 3-act structure, for example. And you might juggle it around a bit, but I guess what we're saying in a way is you cannot not use other people's work. So we can't just by default say if you are using someone else's work, then that is plagiarism and therefore wrong. But also there are situations in which it's not okay. So if you only take from one person's work, that's not okay. If you add nothing, that's not okay. And Tarantino, in particular, in the case of Reservoir Dogs, brings so much new stuff to it and so much talent to it that is absolutely up on the side of this is totally fine. You've got way too much new stuff to this.
It's interesting, though, what you say. There's clearly a point where it goes from being okay to not okay, and by no means is that a clear divider.
Yes.
So what general rules? You said don't take from one person. In Tarantino's case, it's pretty far from what we would consider plagiarism. Yeah.
But at what point
how
does
do
it
they
become?
determine it? Yeah.
How much closer would Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs had to have been to that film for it to then cross that line for us? What do you think? Let us know in the comments below.
It's not an easy question. That's not a black or white.
I mean, I think I can say personally with absolute confidence that Tarantino Reservoir Dogs, absolutely fine.
You know what helped him as well is how much he'd get in front of it. So this came up at Cannes when Reservoir Dogs finally got some traction. As you mentioned earlier on, it was about a year before it started to really kick on. And this was something that was labelled at him. People said, we've seen City on Fire. What's your take? And he was like, I'll steal from everything.
Yes.
And I'm going to continue to steal. Great art is great stealing.
Yes. And making it your own and trying to do a better job of crafting those things and trying to improve it, additive, you know, like I will have made a thumbnail for this very video you're watching. I didn't just never look at a thumbnail in my entire life. Like I look at them all the time and I'm trying to think like, what do they do that I like? You cannot make art without looking at other people's art and saying, what do I like from that? And what do I like from that? And and then trying to do it better. I think there's an element for me, now I'm thinking about it, of trying to make it better.
Yeah.
Like if you are just trying to recreate, that's not okay. But if you are trying to make a better version of something, maybe that's okay.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe not always though.
Yeah.
What if you're trying to make a better version of something, but you fail spectacularly? Not just because it's bad, but let's say in the case of songs, right?
Yes.
Well, actually, no, because that would be more covers. But maybe I'm going to create a great version of this, and it's going to be great because I'm in it, and then you're in it, and then it's the same film or the same performance.
So is it results based? If it is, should I amend my statement to it's okay if it is better?
I'll be honest with you, the ends always justify the means. Always in the court of public opinion.
You know what? I'm happy with that as
Good
the conclusion of the main video. Thank you so much for listening.
Don't even comment.
We'll see you on the next.
That's a fact.
This debate is done. See you on the next one. Okay, so Steve Buscemi, what if he never auditioned? So presumably there's a bit of a story around Steve Buscemi getting the role. So what's happening there?
So what many do not know is Quentin Tarantino, director of Reservoir Dogs, appearing in Reservoir Dogs as Mr. Brown, who is the one who has the interesting interpretation of Madonna's Like a Virgin. He originally wrote and intended to play the part of Mr. Pink, which is Steve Buscemi's character in Reservoir Dogs, himself. He wanted to give other actors the chance to play the character, but really had himself in mind, obviously. He is a trained actor. He'd done some acting before this first.
Elvis impersonator?
Yep. Yes, very true. On a TV show, he did it once. He has appeared on.
Really?
Can't remember what show. It might be.
I need to see that.
It might be. This is killing me. You know, Cheers spun off something. It might be Frasier, maybe. Okay. Correct me if I'm wrong. Anyway,
fact check that.
That's wrong. At 100, there is a 95% chance that's wrong.
That's not being cut.
Tarantino, but listen here, Jambo. He wanted to play Mr. Pink, all right? Am I stalling here or something? He wanted to play Mr. Pink, but he also wanted to give other actors the chance to audition, which was a good move because he's not a very good actor. When Steve Buscemi came into audition, Tarantino told him that he had to have a killer audition in order to steal this part away. I think we both agree. He's incredible.
Is he the best performance in this? I mean, he was unbelievable.
I mentioned it in the review. There are two for me. Buscemi and Madsen.
Yeah, okay.
But Madsen definitely has a cooler, a more interesting part, I'd say.
Yeah, and I would say that is enough what you've just said there to convince me that I do think I prefer Buscemi's.
I think he does more with less.
He's just, I tell you, I was trying to figure out why I like Buscemi so much, and I think part of the reason is because appearance-wise, he's so unassuming, and yet the way he carries himself is very kind of self-assured and quite direct and confident.
It's very true, that, isn't it?
And it's so mesmerizing to watch.
Because you know he was a firefighter. Maybe it's something to do with that in real life. Because he actually helped out on 9/11. When 9/11 happened, he actually came to his local fire station and said, "Hey, can I help out?"
That's
like
so
a
cool.
proper geezer.
God, I love the guy. I thought he was amazing in this. I loved his role, but I do think that it was Buscemi that made it Like, I could see a lot of other actors doing a naff job of that.
Including Quentin. And you know what's funny, though?
Yeah.
Now that I think about it, the way Buscemi's character, Mr. Pink, the neuroticism, the zaniness, the kind of scatty nature.
Yes.
Finding out that Tarantino wrote it for himself, it is definitely the character that is most suited to his just like wild.
Yeah. Yeah.
All over the place.
Yeah. Like, I mean, yeah, Steve Buscemi is just unbelievable in it. And you know what? It was one of his first proper performances.
Breakthrough role, really, wasn't it? He did this, and then Fargo was quite a bit later. So
Was it?
That's another question then. Let's say Buscemi doesn't come in, doesn't audition,
Yep.
doesn't land the part. How does that affect cinema history?
I actually think that Reservoir Dogs would not have had the impact it would have had. Let's assume that Tarantino would have given himself the role in the end.
You see, the only person stopping Quentin Tarantino from Tarantinoing all over.
And to be fair to that statement, that assumption, he gave it to Steve Buscemi. He is perfect for the role. No one else could have done it like Steve Buscemi. So let's assume that nobody else turned up and did the audition like that. Tarantino takes the role. That's his first feature film. So the hard influence on cinema following it of the nonlinear narrative, of the violence, of the dialogue, all the stuff that nowadays we take inspiration from Tarantino, from things that Tarantino really pioneered, wouldn't be the same. It would just have delayed that whole process. Maybe eventually it would have happened, but we'd be years and years back.
Yeah, I don't even know. Like, here's one thought. People see this film and see an egocentric director who puts himself in it and isn't very good at acting, and see it as a missed opportunity of this could be quite good if he wasn't in it, just hamming it up with poor acting choices. And maybe he never kicks on beyond that.
Yeah.
So it might not just change the career of Steve Buscemi, who might have to go back to being a firefighter. Maybe our whole understanding of cinema, the effect, the ripple effect of Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs is not felt in the 90s.
Yes.
We don't have like gangsters that will have conversations about Big Macs.
Yeah. That's what I mean. The
disturbing early
dialogue,
scenes.
it didn't happen before. It's the first time where like, Tarantino, whether you are a cinema buff who like him or don't, he has had probably one of the biggest impact, maybe top 3 biggest impact on cinema in the last 10, 20 years.
Big time. Since he came out, no one has had a bigger impact, I'd say.
And if I write dialogue, I will start by looking at what he does so well. And I'm sure that anybody else writing screenplays probably has looked at Tarantino's dialogue and thought, like, what is it that's so magical about this? I feel like every single film, even if it doesn't represent Tarantino in any way whatsoever, probably is inspired by Tarantino's art, and it starts with his success on Reservoir Dogs, which probably wouldn't have happened if he played Mr. Pink.
No.
Because who the fuck would watch that?
Because he's insufferable to watch on screen. And you know what? All the films that he has been in a lead role, so 4 Rooms, critically panned. I don't know if it was critically panned, but it didn't do very well.
No Reservoir Dogs.
No. From Dusk Till Dawn, again, didn't really make any wave at all. You know what, actually, we should give him massive credit, because he obviously can't tell that he's not very good at acting, and yet he still was able to see.
Yeah.
Because it would have had a massively negative effect on... We'd be living in a different timeline.
We'd be going from an exceptional performance, not down to a neutral performance, but to a like it would take a central character from exceptional to terrible. That distance between Buscemi's Mr. Pink against what Tarantino's Mr. Pink, the film just would not have been the same. Like, not even close.
Yeah, and it genuinely would have adversely affected the popularity of that film to an extent which could be immeasurable on cinema history.
And would Tarantino have managed to, I think probably, but would he have managed to create the career that he has currently got if Reservoir Dogs flopped because he killed it, as in he ruined it? Probably eventually, but I think that there's a massive delay there because funding and things like that.
Pulp Fiction was really on the back of the success of Reservoir Dogs.
Right, exactly. So maybe he would have still tried to write Pulp Fiction, but how the heck, like, part of the thing that differentiates Reservoir Dogs so much from Pulp Fiction is the budget. Like, would Pulp Fiction have worked with a $1.5 million budget if he could have got that? If Reservoir Dogs died, like, just didn't go anywhere because people didn't like the ultra violence and the non-linear narrative and all the stuff that he brought new, and they hated the main performance, would he have managed to make Pulp Fiction?
And if you see like success as a series of just lucky breaks and like, you know, on different days, this could have happened versus this. On different days, Seth MacFarlane was supposed to be on the plane that went into the Twin Towers.
Yes.
You know, things like that where he missed his plane.
Kind of fate.
Yeah. So if
Buscemi never turned up.
If Buscemi never turned up, maybe Tarantino just doesn't make it. Maybe it just is a failed independent film that never got running with a bad performance from one of the tritagonists.
I heard that term. Yeah, tritagonist.
Was it tritagonist?
I didn't Google it. I was like, Fred will know. So just to clarify then, Steve Buscemi doesn't turn up. Nobody else is as good as Steve Buscemi for Mr. Pink.
Yep.
Tarantino takes Mr. Pink. Reservoir Dogs flops. Tarantino can't make subsequent films because it takes him an incredibly long time to ever get that momentum, to get the funding to make things like Pulp Fiction again.
Yeah.
Tarantino never takes off. And literally every single film today that will have taken some inspiration, if not directly from Tarantino's work, indirectly, won't have had that inspiring factor. Steve Buscemi not going to that role changed cinema forever.
Steve Buscemi doesn't make it, let's say as well. Chuck that in there.
Yeah, why not?
Steve Buscemi.
And I tell you what, Maximus's family still die.
Yeah, Maximus' family always dies.
Thanks so much for listening, everyone. We'll see you on the next one.
Nice, thank you.
We've got a little bit of time. Tarantino's
what
films.
What are you thinking?
I've got a couple of little bits that I found in the research.
Oh yeah,
you might like this. Tarantino's films take place in the same universe. You know that, and and even if it didn't really happen in the universe, it happens in a film in the universe. Vic Vega and Vincent Vega are brothers.
Yes.
So you might know that, but there's a fan theory with a reasonable amount of evidence. There is an official sequel to Django Unchained that was a comic. So this is official. This is part of the canon. Came out in 2015. The Django Zorro comic.
Okay.
Zorro's name is Don Diego de la Vega.
Ooh.
And so it makes sense that Tarantino probably has Vic and Vincent, who are brothers, descendant from Zorro.
That's cool. And that, I mean, you wouldn't have thought that's a coincidence.
No, of course not.
Interestingly enough.
Vic and Vincent.
Donde está la biblioteca? I also think an interesting one to add, which I'm not sure if you probably do know, is that Vic was supposed to be Pulp Fiction lead.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so Michael Madsen was originally.
I'm glad it happened the way it did. What do you reckon?
Yeah, big time. Yeah. John Travolta was incredible.
The dance scene, I can't see him pulling off. I think
it's an interesting what if that I was considering because Tarantino would have probably found a way to get John Travolta in something because he was such a massive fan. Yeah. It wouldn't have been then, or if it was in Pulp Fiction, he might have changed Pulp Fiction up a bit.
And then who would have played Mr. Blonde? Who would have played Toothpick Vic?
He was already Michael Madsen was going to play
both.
He played Mr. Blonde, yeah.
Yes.
And then originally Pulp Fiction was like a sequel with Michael Madsen in it. As same character.
As Mr. Blonde, right.
Yeah,
okay.
So it was originally the same character. It was built around him. Obviously set before he died. And then he couldn't do it because he had another film which didn't do very well, which unfortunately I can't remember the name of. Someone may be able to correct me. And yeah, he basically said, sorry, mate, I can't do it. I've tried to do this film, which I think is going to be a big hit. I'd love to. And then he ended up saying it was like one of the biggest regrets of his life because that film didn't do very well.
Okay.
Now, why this was also an interesting what if is because Michael Madsen, who I think, I certainly feel is incredible in Reservoir Dogs, maybe missed a chance to be a bit of a big time Hollywood star
Yeah, 100%.
from not being in Pulp Fiction. Michael Madsen basically missed a chance to be massive because of it. Similarly, Samuel L. Jackson wasn't massive, but what's his face? Lawrence Fishburne. There you go.
Yes.
He was who Tarantino was trying to cast for Samuel L. Jackson's character.
What was his
Jules. But yeah, his first choice was Lawrence Fishburne.
Right.
And Lawrence Fishburne said, I can't do this. His agent said, don't do it because we want to start we need you to be prepared for leading man roles. So that's what they were trying to push in the 90s. He was kind of a secondary character in a lot of films, but he was bubbling over.
Yes.
And he really wanted to do Pulp Fiction, but his agency was like, no, you need to start saying only leading man roles. And it basically kicked his career way back, elevated Samuel L. Jackson's career.
Yeah.
And Lawrence Fishburne really didn't quite hit the heights that he probably didn't hit the heights he would have if he'd have been in it, but also it kind of set him back until The Matrix in 99. So the whole
Matrix
90s
came out later, did it?
Matrix came out in 1999.
Right.
And so,
but he was in Apocalypse Now, right? Fishburne?
Yeah, he was, but he
So
was
that
like
was-
15
he
or
was-
something
he was underage, he
ridiculous.
lied about,
Yeah,
yeah.
he pretended he was older. But he wasn't a star because of Apocalypse
Right,
Now. He was
right.
in films in the 90s.
Yeah.
But he didn't become they were trying to push him as a global star.
Yeah.
That's what his agents were saying, this is your next step. And instead he basically made the wrong choice. Didn't do Pulp Fiction, which probably would have guaranteed. Like Samuel L. Jackson got an Oscar nomination for Jules.
Did he?
Yeah, I think it's his only Oscar nomination.
Can you imagine if bloody Morpheus and Jules switched? Like, can you imagine if Samuel L. Jackson played Morpheus?
Wild to think, isn't it?
That's
and
so
also,
funny.
you know who was offered Neo?
Yeah.
Will Smith.
Oh my
Wouldn't
god!
have
You know
worked.
what? You were talking about this in the last segment we did about fate and how it changes things, and
Yeah.
how little detail. I mean, like, it's not divine intervention, but Tarantino has a way of casting that just works. Like broadly, I there were a few people I didn't like Lawrence Tierney at all in this.
Which one is Lawrence Tierney?
He plays Joe, the dad.
Is he, and he seems like the sort who's not actually an actor, but was originally a gangster or something. Like,
Yeah, there was somebody. It could have been him. He was arrested during the filming.
right, okay.
For shooting his nephew in a drunken rage. And then he was allowed to continue filming for a day or so to finish all his lines because he was a supporting actor, wasn't he? And everybody, including Tarantino, hated him so much that Tarantino fired him on the spot on one of the days on set, and he left to a round of applause.
Really? Why
Everyone
would-
was so happy to get rid of Lawrence Tierney.
Really?
Yeah. And then obviously he must have gone to jail because he shot his nephew.
Mad. That's
Wild, isn't it?
very interesting.
Yeah. Bring it
Wonder
back
if
round
that's
to the
gone.
Vic and Vincent. Do you know they were going to do a film?
I think I heard that.
Yeah, so
Didn't
they were going
go
to do a
off the
film
ground.
with the two of them.
Was that going to be after Pulp Fiction?
It was going to be after Pulp Fiction, and then Tarantino decided not to do it because the actors got too old for the roles.
Right.
So he'd obviously, I mean, you know what he's like. He obviously had a vision.
Yeah.
I think I heard it was a prequel thing.
Well,
of
it
the
would
two of
have
them
had
back in Amsterdam, maybe.
It would have had to be because they both die.
Right. So it will have had to have been. And then the reason that it didn't go ahead specifically was
Spoilers.
because we'll put it on the screen. Was because the actors got too old.
Interesting, because do you know when it was that he
No.
wanted? Yeah, well,
I don't, but that would have been really cool. I love a bit of lore. I love a little bit of universe
it would have been
building.
cool, but in all honesty, I usually prefer the idea of these things than the execution. I kind of like that it didn't happen. I really like both Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction as
Yeah.
is. I love that they both got their moments in those films.
Yes.
And I don't think we need to wheel them out for a buddy cop film, some sort of
Well, yeah.
buddy gangster romp in Amsterdam.
Tarantino would have killed it. That was 1 point, and I think we got a whole segment out of it. I'm going to be doing a video.
Were there any quick fire ones you wanted to just rattle off that I won't comment on and ruin?
No, I don't mind. No, that was perfect. That's exactly how that should have gone. And we could literally call it now, but Sally Menker, editor for Reservoir Dogs. I'm going to do a whole thing. I'm going to do some learning
You
about
like
her
the
one day.
idea of that, don't you?
but she did 8 films with him, worked on them for months together. The whole dynamic supposedly was that she would try and make him dial it down and he would try and make it bigger. But I do think that Tarantino films, when you really think about it, the editing is incredible. You know, like you can't cut a non-linear narrative together without a good editor knowing exactly what they're doing with it and how you present that story. And then obviously you look like later in some of the films. And yeah, I mean, I've heard she's amazing. And it got me thinking, I was like, you know what? Actually, yeah, it was really well edited.
Yeah, particularly how much he would leave on the cutting room floor, right? He would give her so much.
He said that basically the only requirement for Reservoir Dogs was that the editor was a woman, because she would nurture him and the story more, which is a bit creepy.
What does he mean by that?
I don't know. I think.
Explain yourself, Quentin.
Maybe what he means is that a male editor he might expect to impose their opinions and takes on Tarantino's story more than a woman might. Maybe that's what he means by that.
Maybe it feels like a female editor is a bit removed. Is like not always, but generally. Yep. Tarantino are very boy.
Yeah.
Totally. Boys prefer Tarantino films, and I've watched Tarantino films with girls who've gone like, "What?
I don't get
it.
Yeah.
Why is he doing that?" And I'm like, "Because it's so cool." Yeah. Obviously, generalizing here. So maybe that's what he meant, that you need someone who's like, this is just a job, and you're overdoing it there, you're underdoing it there.
Yeah,
not getting too affected by that's really cool. Oh my God, we have to keep it.
Yeah. No, I see what you mean.
Is that what you mean, Quentin?
Yeah, when this video launches and you
was that what you meant, mate?
Sorry about all the things we said about your creepy acting.
Oh shit! Don't watch that one.
Don't watch that one. I'll bleep it out. Well, we got this isn't a fact, but this is just an opinion I wanted to put out there. I was watching some scenes back over. Nice Guy Eddie was fucking awesome. I loved that performance. I can't remember his name.
Good, isn't he?
So cool. That's his own shell suit. I don't know if you know, the whole budget thing meant that most of the characters were wearing some of their own stuff, and that was his own jacket. And yeah, a lot of them were wearing their own jeans. Somebody supplied the suits,
right,
as kind of advertisement for their firm or whatever. But it was Michael Madsen's own car. It was
that rings a bell.
And it was Nice Guy Eddie's own shell suit, and you know, I love the image of this kind of clearly when you think about Harvey Keitel being there and things. An amazing script and a shoestring budget, just pulling together these guys of raw talent and making something so incredible when you can see the constraints of the budget on the product.
Yeah, I think that
it's it
drives like it's similar to what we were saying about 12 Angry Men, where it's story it's all substance,
and the constraints almost make it better.
Yeah, I agree.
That's pretty much everything. So thanks so much for listening, everyone. We got new podcasts every Wednesday and Sunday on your favorite podcasting platform. Videos 4 days a week on YouTube. Let us know in the comments below if you have anything at all you'd like to give, feedback, suggestions, comments, anything. We would love to hear it. Can't wait to see you on the next one.
Yeah,
thanks so much.
New format actually. So any suggestions? Yes. What do you think of this? Do we mix it up? We're going to do a different one for the next one. So see if you prefer that.
We'll mention
Let me know.
Next one.
Thanks, guys.